everyone. Welcome to the Talkoffame podcast. And today I'm introducing Elizabeth Swindell. Elizabeth is Miss Queen of the South, UFL cheerleader, and host of Empowerment with Elizabeth, in which throughout this podcast, she hosts to enlighten younger girls and women to let them know what is possible and what they are capable of and provide them with examples of women who are slaying the game in a variety of fields. Which, like, I know I'm a big empowerment woman freak, as a lot of people call it, but this podcast, once I heard about this, I'm like, this is right up my alley. So, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us today. I'm really appreciate you coming on and taking the time.
Oh, I'm so excited to be on this. I love podcasting, so let's do it.
Amazing. So if people are kind of not familiar with your work, kind of want to learn more, like tell us kind of a little bit more about you and your work.
Yeah, so my name's Elizabeth, like she just said, and I'm from Dallas, Texas, but I went to undergrad at the University of Mississippi where I majored in nutrition and dietetics. And I was also pre-physician associate, which is similar to pre-med, if you know what that is.
Mhm.
And then I had minors in business, biology, chemistry, and dance. So I was a busy gal.
Mhm.
And during my undergrad degree with nutrition, I was also in the honors college, so I had to pick a topic to write a dissertation about. And so I decided to do food insecurity, and specifically food insecurity in collegiate athletes during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was kind of where I got started with food insecurity. And then after that, actually, I started doing pageants, and it was kind of just a seamless choice to make my CSI related to food insecurity and food waste, and eventually food sovereignty as well.
Yeah, like once I saw in your bio that you do food insecurity, I'm like, okay, this is something I have to bring up because with my job is basically dedicated to ending food insecurity. And I'm really doing all that stuff. So of course myself, I'm like, I have to answer these questions because I literally all am a freak recently about food insecurity and all that stuff because of course I work for an organization that does those things. But I'm also like, okay, like what is it? Like how do I know if I'm dealing with food insecurity? It's a matter of finding those facts, but why did you kind of choose food insecurity as your initiative for Miss Queen of the South?
Yeah, so it was really just because of my dissertation that I did during undergrad. And, I got to see, I worked on another research project as well in undergrad that wasn't my dissertation, it was separate, but it was looking at food insecurity in rural areas of Mississippi. So, specifically Calhoun County, which is a historically low income community. And I'm just seeing how they were affected by food insecurity because, Mississippi is the #1 food insecure state in the United States and has been for a couple decades now. So, unfortunately, it's kind of the prime location to be when it comes to food insecurity research. And so, I decided to really just capitalize on that and make that my CSI and my platform and something that I champion through pageantry.
Yeah, like how did you kind of, learn about all these things? Of course, you go to college for it, but how did you kind of learn so much about it? Because of course, with the United States, it's such a major factor in what food insecurity is like. I think the United States is one of the top producers in food insecurity. So, like, how did you kind of learn about it and advocate for it outside of college?
Yeah, so I kind of just like stumbled into it. And like I said, I was trying to find a topic that related to my major. So, nutrition. So it had to be something to do with food, obviously. And one of my professors she was actually the dean for the nutrition school at Ole Miss. And I love her so much. Her name's Dr. Valiant. She's the best. And she was doing, or she had a grad student that was doing research with food insecurity. And she kind of just presented to me a few topics that she had kind of her hands in that were available to write a dissertation on. And I was like, food insecurity seems interesting. And it turns out that it is, and that it is a really big issue in the United
Mhm.
States and Mississippi right now. And so, like I said, I've just kind of taken that and run with it and made it my own. And kind of tried to continue to look at why Mississippi is one of the most food insecure states and what besides food insecurity may be causing that. So maybe not just simply there being a lack of food, but maybe they have a lack of transportation, or maybe they have a lack of social capital, or a lack of friends in their neighborhood that are able to, tell them about the resources or help them get to the grocery store, whatever it may be. So that's kind of been my focus lately.
Yeah, like, also to add on to that, like, of course, With food insecurity, main reason people are facing it is really just because they don't maybe don't have enough money, or they just don't maybe have access to that food depending on money, where they live, or if they have a car. And there's many reasons why people face this food insecurity depending on what how much access they have, and depending on their state. But from where I am in Pennsylvania, like Pennsylvania is like the fourth largest producer of food products in the United States with 59,000 farms. So, of course, with Pennsylvania, it's one of the biggest producers in the United States. And still, food insecurity is such a big factor, even though you have so many access to different farms and different products, food banks. Like, there's so many things that you could. And of course, with Pennsylvania, they have big access to one of the best products in the United States, but also Pennsylvania is still, from where I am in Northeast Pennsylvania, still deals with a lot of food insecurity with me working on hands on deck with everyone and locally here and facing it. And I'm just like, are you kidding? Like, why is food insecurity still a big thing in Pennsylvania if we're in the fourth range for a largest producer of food products is something that I'm like, okay, like what's going on? Like why is people like I'm just like figuring out like why is people still doing food insecurity if we're one of the biggest producers is sometimes I'm like wondering.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And that's been one of my main focuses is just helping people to understand that like in the South, we've got obviously tons of farms. That's one of the main things that the South is known for is our like Arkansas is the number one producer of rice in the country. And I think maybe globally, like I mean, like massive farms are down here. So how is it possible that there's people that are still going hungry when we have farms that are, have excess food or like grocery stores that have food that's expiring or not being able to be used. How is it possible that we have all of these resources, including food banks and food pantries, but we still have people that are going hungry and that aren't able to access those resources? And that's what I've realized is that it's really just a lack of social capital, number one, but also a lack of a way to get the food to the people who actually need it. So a lack of, refrigerated trucks to take food from restaurants at the end of the night to a food pantry, or, a lack of transportation for those expired or soon to be expired foods, expired because we know that a lot of food, even though it does have an expiration date, it doesn't actually go bad.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of times it's, a lack of way to get that expired or soon to be expired food from the grocery store to a food bank. So that really is what the issue is. And that is really the root of why people are still going hungry, even though we have, it seems like a surplus of food in a lot of the areas of the United States.
Yeah, and plus, like with being part of the South and Eastern states, from where I am, there's tons of farms in Pennsylvania, but not towards where I am, but there's tons of farms. And of course, with being from the South, there's so many farms that like sometimes I'm like, why are people not getting access? At just tons of farms and tons of produce to give out. But sometimes it depends if the food farms want to do a produce stand or even do a food distribution because of course, every farm and state is different. Maybe some states don't allow it. Maybe some places have strict rules. Who knows? I know every state's different in terms of those things, but everything is like even from the south. There's tons of farms and tons of crops that people really want access to. Because of course, with eating tons of vegetables, like I know a lot of people they love vegetables that they'll take as many as they could.
Mhm.
And of course, and people are probably thinking like, okay, why are you talking about food security? Like, what is insecurity or food security? Like in your own words or explanation, like what is kind of food insecurity and how does it really affect us?
Yeah, so food insecurity is really just, what we would call hunger. And that's how I explain it to my kiddos whenever I go into a school program is that's really just the root of it is that it's people that are going hungry on a regular basis, even if it's just for one meal. So really just it's really occurs when people don't have a consistent access to food or ability to get food. So, and also what you were talking about too is something called food sovereignty, which is another big part of it too. And it's the idea that people shouldn't just have access to food; they should have access to a healthy diet if they want one. And a lot of times, if people are on government funded programs like SNAP or supplemental nutrition access programs, those really only cover not great food for you. You know, you can't get a hot meal with SNAP, which means that if there's like a rotisserie chicken that's at the grocery store, like those are my mom's favorite because she doesn't like to have to prepare the whole chicken. So she just grabs a rotisserie chicken because it's easy.
Mhm.
Um, but if you're on SNAP, you can't get a rotisserie chicken, which would be ideal if you're trying to, do a fast dinner, which is the reality for a lot of these people because usually they are working multiple jobs. And same thing with produce. There's often not a plethora of produce, especially in food deserts,
Mhm.
when there's only a gas station that accepts SNAP. So if that's your only option and you're having to use SNAP, then your options are probably going to be junk food. So
Mhm.
I can't remember the last gas station that I went to that had a awesome produce section, and I feel like that's pretty across the board. I don't think that many gas stations have, all the veggies and all the fruits laid out with the little baggies that you can put them into. That's just not commonplace in the United States. I hope that that's something that we're able to have one day because that really is the root of the issue, especially when it comes to a healthy diet.
Yeah, and of course, like of course from being from the desert, like the West Coast, there's not a lot of farms on the West Coast. Of course, with the desert, maybe like for example, or maybe Arkansas or Arizona or maybe Texas. Of course, their desert states with hot 100-degree heat. I'm like, it's kind of impossible to do build crops in those 100-degree heats. And of course, with having crops, not a lot of maybe gas stations or even restaurants or whatever don't have fresh produce from what I've seen here in Pennsylvania. Like from me working with things like from an organization, we often do have produce stands from local farmers in Pennsylvania just to get like people that have access and local here and to Pennsylvania. But of course, not a lot of people have access, even though we have tons of farms here in Pennsylvania. So it really is just a matter of okay, no matter what state we live in, like everyone should have access, no matter the heat or climate we live in, right?
Yeah, well, that's what's crazy too, is that we're both so blessed, to have a grocery store and gas stations, and not just one, but like multiple grocery stores and gas stations near us and readily accessible. And so we don't have to worry about, making sure that we have enough gas in our car to make it 20 miles to the next grocery store, which is the reality for a lot of people, especially in middle America and Appalachia. And so, I mean, that really is the root of the issue too, is just really making sure that we're expanding those SNAP resources so that the people that are utilizing SNAP are able to actually use it at whatever resource they have in their city.
Definitely. And is there any like food security related apps to keep track of anything? Like, or is there not none? But I saw something there was, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple. One of them is called Yuka, and it's really cool. It allows you to scan like produce, like the little tags that are on produce, or really any food, and find the lowest cost option for that. So again, not really able to use if you don't have a car to actually get to the grocery store, but still a resource nonetheless. And then there's also a really cool app called Table to Table. And basically what it does is it finds people who are in need, and it connects them with restaurants who have an excess of food at the end of the night. So they're doing a really great job of bridging the gap between the resource and the people who need the resource, which is really what we're lacking in the United States.
That's so interesting. I did have to check those apps out. I definitely need recommendations on different things, so I definitely will. But like, how can like we advocate for insecurities? Of course, there's so many ways we can advocate for it. There's like, okay, what should we do to reach more people? But in your opinion, like, how can we advocate for it?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many ways. The obvious answer would be to volunteer at a food bank or a food pantry, because not only is that super helpful to the people that are running it, but it also is really fun normally. Would definitely recommend if you haven't ever done that. I always enjoy doing that. But I mean, it could be so much easier than that too. I talk about food waste as well, and that really is a big part of food insecurity. And
Mhm.
that can look like just, splitting an entree, or, taking your leftovers home, or One time I'm from Dallas, and I was, walking into a restaurant, and I had a homeless man ask me for money. And so I made sure that whenever I left the restaurant that I was able to box up like my little side of fries that I hadn't touched and give it to him on the way out so that he'd have something to eat. It's literally as simple as that. Like those are all things that we can factor into our daily lives in some capacity. So it's just a matter of being mindful.
Mhm.
Going through your pantry and making sure that you're using things before they expire. And if you aren't going to be able to use them, then you can take them to the food pantry. Just little things like that, just making sure that people are more cognizant of their consumption and the effects of their food waste, because the reality is that food is the number one, um, I guess, substance in landfills as it is today. So, we can all do things to reduce our footprint on the world, but also help people who are hungry.
For sure. That is so well said. But I know you are a cheerleader as well, but of course when you're a cheerleader you had to have so much energy, which I can never do. Like it's like I don't know why, but that much energy just can't just slides through me like quickly. But as a cheerleader, how do you maintain energy levels when performing?
I think that the biggest thing that I would give to not just girls who are, dancing or athletes, but also to pageant girls and really just anybody listening, diet culture is such a big thing. And I think a lot of times we get roped into that. And especially, when you have a very form-fitting uniform that you need to look good in, it's really easy to say, oh gosh, I don't need to eat that. But in reality, it's really important to make sure that you're feeding your body well so that your body can execute what needs to be done, especially during a 4-hour game where you're exercising and doing cardio the entire time. We don't get a break. So I always make sure that I'm stocking up on carbs the night before and the morning of. I think a lot of times that's the first thing to go, especially in diet culture. So I always like to encourage people to eat carbs. It's a macronutrient for a reason. And so
Mhm.
you should definitely eat some, especially if you're going to do a really hard workout. And so that's, I feel like, kind of my savior. I always keep a granola bar on hand, even at the games. And I try to bring it out with me to the field if we can. We can usually bring out like our little water bottle. So I always try to attach it to that so that I can take it out and have it out on the field with me. But, just obviously hydrating and just making sure that my body's prepared, not just the day of, but beforehand too. So, making sure that I'm working out regularly and not just cardio, but also strength training is super important. But then, like I said, just a healthy diet is really what it comes down to.
Oh, 100%. Like, as someone who deals with eating before a such a good workout is something I'm struggling with. So, of course, that's something I had to ask for someone that's in like cheerleading and everything. Of course, I'm a person that loves to work out and go to the gym, so I'm always looking for tips. If anyone has any tips, feel free to message me because I'm always taking some tips. But like, how often do you practice for because I know you work like are cheerleading for Memphis Showboats, but how often do you usually practice for them?
During our season, we normally would practice 2 or 3 times a week. Um, for every single game, we had a new routine that we had to learn. So that means a new routine that needs to be staged, that needs to be cleaned, that needs to be, able to be performed to the best of our ability, because ultimately that's what's going to be on TV. So,
Mhm.
and also it was really interesting because this past year, the Memphis Showboats cheerleaders were also cheerleaders for the Houston Gamblers. So
Oh, really?
we had back-to-back games. So we had Showboats games were on Saturdays and Gamblers games were on Sundays. So we would practice throughout the week for both of our routines because they'd be different. So it was a lot of routines, a lot of things to remember, a lot of things changing because, inevitably somebody's going to get sick at some point. Somebody's going to have a family emergency at some point. Like something's going to happen. We're going to have to fill the spot with somebody else. So just being able to be flexible, I think would be my biggest piece of advice to anybody wanting to go into the dance industry in general.
Ooh, that's so interesting. Like that's like the hardest part about maybe doing sports is that like you have to be so much flexible
Yeah,
Like with different
definitely.
things in terms of dances. I mean, I have a bad memory, so it's hard. Well, I learn things quickly, but at
Same.
the same time, I'm like, I have such a bad memory of what I
Me
ate this
too.
morning. At the same time, I can remember a dance routine from
Yeah.
maybe a month ago. So it really depends on how much you really want to do, but how do you kind of time manage all these things? Of course, with learning all these routines and stuff, and of course, like with pageants and stuff, like how do you manage all of it? And plus with school as well.
I get this question a lot, and I honestly don't know because it seems pretty like I guess I just like to be busy. I don't know. I function at a better level, I guess, whenever my life is really fast paced. So I enjoy being busy. I enjoy having a lot of things going on at once. And it's kind of just how I've done things since I started, especially my undergrad degree. So for about the past 6 years. But I keep a planner, which is really important. I have it with me literally right here. It is my lifeline. It tells me exactly where I need to be, what I need to do. I have a to-do list on my phone that I'm constantly checking throughout the day. You can ask any of my friends and family. I'm sure I'm sure I annoy them with how much I check it, but really just those two things help me keep track of what I'm supposed to be doing, where I'm supposed to be,
Mhm.
what I need to be working on, and I also don't like to really take downtime, which is not great. I wouldn't recommend that, but in what I feel like most people would be watching their favorite show. I don't really like to watch TV or movies, so what I really do like to do is get stuff done on my to-do list. So that's when I like start knocking stuff out.
Yeah, I'm the
Um,
same exact way. I'm like, I
yeah,
love relaxing, but at the same time, I'm just like, I just want to get these things off my to-do list whenever. Because there's always, every single day, there's always something adding up that I'm just like, I'm just gonna focus on my to-do list and do what I have to do. Then just go on with my life. If I watch TV, listen to music, I'm the happiest person. Like I love being busy, even though if I'm so stressed about how much I'm putting on, I'm just like, I just rather be busy. I don't care how stressed I am. I'd rather be busy. Like my motto is like be busy for a happier life for some reason. I don't know why, but that's like my mindset.
yeah.
But like, do you have like a favorite like artist or music you like to dance to?
I'm a jazz girl for sure. So I've started doing lyrical more recently, more frequently. So, like, especially for pageants, I've been doing lyrical and contemporary for the past couple. But what I really like is jazz and like that pommy kind of style that's very, very NFL cheerleader, which makes perfect sense. So I really like to do that. But I mean, honestly, anything that is allows me to do like leg extensions and fun jumps, that's really up my alley. I'm not picky.
Mhm. I'll definitely I feel like you're more of a hip hop person from what of like I feel like you're more like a hip hop person. Of course, from being a cheerleader. Yeah, I'm sure you do
I
a lot
like
of
hip
hip
hop.
hop.
I was on a college dance team called the Northwest Dance Team, and we competed in hip hop, and we actually placed second in the nation last year, which was really cool.
Oh,
So
nice.
I dabble in hip hop. I do. It's not my favorite though.
More of a jazz person. Like,
More
do
of
you
a
like
jazz
jazz
girl.
music or just like jazz like dancing?
No, and that's so funny because that's something that I didn't realize that non-dancers didn't understand is that jazz dance is not jazz music. I just assumed everybody knew what jazz was. But jazz is more like think like Chicago, like the musical Chicago on Broadway, or like Bob Fosse, Frank Sinatra, like that type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, that's more the type of music I'm talking about, not like
Yeah.
smooth jazz. It's
Yeah,
not what
there's
I'm talking
more of
about.
a like kind of like a old timers type of music rather than like, okay, what is jazz? Like, no, jazz is not like
Yeah.
popular like today. It's mostly like hop pop, country or like hip hop, R&B, rather than
Yeah,
like
it can be
jazz.
to
It
all
kind
of
of
those.
reminds
It can
me
be to
like
all of those.
yeah, it's like the musical Chicago. Like that's
Yeah.
literally what exactly it is. Like that's probably the best explanation I can give everyone of jazz.
Yeah.
But like, of course, you were Miss Queen of the South, and you've been doing it for about like a year now, right?
Ish.
Yeah, about a year-ish. Like, when is like your like, how did you kind of take your talents to become Miss Queen of the South?
Yeah, so I started pageants about a year ago. I didn't grow up doing them, which is kind of shocking, especially for a lot of people here in Mississippi. They're very common in Mississippi.
Mhm.
This was new to me whenever I moved here from Texas, but every high school has a pageant, which I thought that was so funny. I was like, that's the most Mississippi thing ever. But I had a friend who competed her whole life, and especially as a teen in the Miss America program in Missouri. And she suggested that I start competing. She was like, "You're a dancer, like talent is done.
Mhm.
You can talk." I was vice president of my sorority, and so I was on a weekly basis talking to 400 plus people and not giving them great news because I was in charge of standards. So they were never thrilled to hear me talk, which was definitely a learning experience and definitely helped really just make me comfortable with public speaking because I kind of just had to be. So she was like, you can talk, you got your talent, all you need really is a dress. And so I started competing and I won my first local that I ever competed in the Miss America system in Texas. And then I went to compete at Miss Texas with over 60 girls. Miss Texas is actually bigger than Miss America, which is crazy. But
Ooh.
and I placed top 10 at Miss Texas my first year. And now I'm competing in Mississippi. I won my local and now I'm Miss Queen of the South. And I'm so excited to be competing in, I call it my surrogate state, Mississippi, because it's the only place I've ever lived as an adult and by myself. So I'm really excited to be representing our state and representing the whole South, since that's what I'm the queen of,
Mhm.
in June.
No, I love it. Like, like, is there like 51 girls in Miss America total, right?
Yeah,
Oh, so that's crazy because I was watching the pageants over the last couple of days. So one of my friends competed in it for Miss Pennsylvania. So I'm like, I have to watch it, might as well. But I'm like, that's crazy that Miss like Texas added like 60 people. Well, now I
it's
realize
wild.
how big that state is. Like, that's insane.
It's wild. It really is.
But like, was the process hard to become Miss Queen of South, or was kind of like easier, smooth flow after kind of competing before? Because I know like a lot of people that are competing always say like, okay, these pageants are always different. Like, of course, with local and state competitions are always like more smooth, more harder. But was that kind of like was it kind of hard for you to compete in, or was it kind of like smooth?
Um, I'm a big fan of the idea of not getting ready, but staying ready. So that's definitely something that I practice throughout the whole year. So, there was never a period where I wasn't doing something to help my talent or, doing an interview or doing a mock or, looking for a new evening gown. There's always something that I'm going to be doing to prep for state and ultimately Miss America, because that's my goal ultimately is to be Miss America. And so, I feel like if that's what my goal is, then that's something that I need to be, walking in on a daily basis. And so, I feel like I always need to remind girls, especially girls who have been doing pageants their whole life, that a lot of times things that you're doing in your life already are training enough. And so, part of my job at the University of Mississippi is that I teach to college students, and that's great interview practice because they
Right?
ask me crazy questions sometimes and they're a mess. So, that in of itself is training. And I think just kind of looking at life through that lens is helpful and not putting so much pressure on yourself to have to do a mock because you're already doing practice for interview in so many other aspects of your life.
Mhm, it seems like you're doing, like, every aspect of pageants now with teaching, like, having so many questions, I'm just like, I feel like a pro already by so many questions these people are asking me at this point.
Oh, between my college kids and then the kids in schools that are like kindergarten age, I'm like, we're covering all of our bases here with these questions.
I know, the same questions, I'm like, "Okay, I already have an answer for this.
Yeah.
Let's just get it all through for this
Yeah,
day."
you can't
But
throw me a curveball.
I know, right? But, before we head off, I wanna ask you, like, what are some qualities, in your opinion, that you think you should have as a title holder?
I think you should be innovative. And I think you should always be looking for a way to make it better. in really every aspect of life, which is why I say it, because it could be anything. So
Yeah.
I think especially for being a title holder, you should be, looking for new sponsorships within your organization. You should be looking for new appearance opportunities for your organization. You should be, evaluating last year's state competition. How could it be better? How could you improve it if you were going to be the state competitor? How could you represent your state the best if you were to be Miss America? And how could you be implementing that now?
That's such a great way because, of course, when you're of course, in interviews or something, a lot of people or like the judges are always asking, like, how would you prove like our state or Miss America if you were maybe Miss Mississippi, for example? A lot of judges are also looking at, okay, what would you do if you were Miss Mississippi? You know what I mean? Like, what would you do? What was your life's mission? Like, how did you prepare for this? Of course,
Mhm.
a lot of people do it so much differently. Like with Miss America 2024, she's like the first one to serve in the active military, which is amazing. Like it's just like so many different things that people bring, like being in the military. Like it's just like with representation, like to see so many people coming maybe from the military or coming from a small town, like or even doing maybe being a cheerleader. Like there's so many things that people are looking for that are like, okay, who's going to be the next Mississippi? Like there's so many qualities that people need. I'm just like, okay, what is the mindset I'm going into the same? Is there so many people that I'm like, okay, I'm one out of 60 people on this project. So what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. It's wild, and it's definitely, there's mental prep that needs to be done for sure. I think for every contestant, and I think that that's kind of becoming a bigger trend now. But really, the best way to prepare for the job that you want is to go ahead and start doing that job. And so that's definitely something that I practice as a local title holder. I'm very active, and I'm more active than I think a lot of directors would expect a local title holder to be. And that's the point, is because I'm not doing the job of just my local title. I'm doing the job of Miss Mississippi and what I hope to one day be as Miss America.
For sure. I love it. So that is seriously the best way to end off this episode. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to this episode. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Or if anyone has any questions for you, how can people reach out to you?
Yes, y'all, I mean, can DM me on Instagram. I will definitely respond. Like she said, I host a podcast too, so I'd be just cold DMing people. So feel free to reach out. I think I have my email in my bio, but I mean, just find my Instagram. It's notorious_L_I_Z, and you can reach out to me from
Perfect. Everyone go check her out. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode. Make sure to subscribe and like and go check her out. And thank you so much for joining us today. I love chatting with you.
there. Of course, I had so much fun.
Thank